ahead and get started. Thanks so much for coming. All right, here at Bright Idea, as I'm sure you've seen over the last 2 days, if you didn't already know, we have the pleasure of working with some of the most mature, successful innovation programs in the world. And these teams have reached that point through thoughtful planning, taking risks, and key leadership, among other things. And today we're really fortunate to have this fantastic panel of experienced innovation practitioners to share their secrets of success. We've got Greg Thompson with Autolive, Veronica Vasek with Charles Schwab, Jonathan Keith with GE, and Will Hansel from GE.
GM. Come on.
Thank you. Just making sure you're paying attention to the Q&A later. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves and take just a minute. So, Greg?
Yep. Hi, Greg Thompson. So Autolive is a car safety parts supplier. So we make airbags and seatbelts, and we destroy cars, and we play with dummies and that kind of cool stuff. I've been with Autolive about 23 years, and I've been working with Bright Ideas since 2010. So we have quite a history with these guys. So I feel like family.
All right. Thanks so much, Greg.
I'm Veronica Vasek. I work at Charles Schwab, which, for those of you that are in the San Francisco area, know that we are a financial brokerage firm. None of that screams innovation, but I promise you that we're capable of doing that. I have been working with the innovation program and with Rod here at Bright Ideas for the last year or so. I've had the pleasure of working at Schwab in many capacities over the last 10 years, and I consider myself the petulant 5-year-old who says why and why not, and
Nice.
Why can't we and why don't we, and this doesn't make sense all the time, which is I think how I've ended up here.
The third gorilla, right? Isn't that the
Yes.
story? Yeah, yeah.
He refuses to be the third gorilla.
I like it. I'm Jonathan Keith. I work for GE. I'm the new member on the team. I've been there for 6 months, which in GE years is about 10 years. So I get my pension next week. But I have a 30-year career of innovating change in business using technology. So I've done that for a few Fortune 50 companies. I did it on my own as a consultant for a while. And I'm very, very lucky to be with GE, and we have a great experience. I inherited a lot of very good things, but we are rebuilding even as we speak, and looking forward to the future. So thank you for coming to hear us.
Sure.
So Will Hansel, I'm not sure what to say because I felt like we said a lot yesterday. I'll kind of echo Veronica's thing. I've been with the company almost 19 years. It doesn't feel like it. It went by in a blink. I've worked a bunch of different jobs. We were talking earlier today, I was talking with the Nike folks and some of the other people, and the majority of jobs I've had were in what I would call the unknown. They were things that were undefined and a lot of ambiguity, and I think that's one of the key things to being successful in innovation. You got to be able to handle that, because we've had people come into our space and they just disappear. They can't take it, and so that's mostly what my career has been.
All right. Thanks so much. So at Bright Idea, we've spent the last 20 years examining how innovation is executed and learning from amazing clients like these four and all of you in this room. And the result of that and the vision of our leaders like Matt and Genevieve is this innovation journey, which I know you saw yesterday and you've probably seen a few times today. And the reason that I bring this up is that there are a unique set of activities, roles, tools, and outcomes that are going to be leveraged at each step of this journey. And what we're going to hear about today is how the innovation leaders and their teams have grown their innovation services, and what their efforts have been to successfully expand those efforts. So some of the things that we're going to talk about as an example are how has Charles Schwab mastered the innovation program journey and set themselves up for expansion in labs and transformation? What prompted Autolive to enter the ecosystem space and start looking at things like tech scouting? How has GE handled staffing for everything they do across the journey? And what are some of the things that GM has done to prep internally for their work in the gigs space? So not everybody follows this journey precisely in this fashion, but we can be sure that those people have been successful in traversing this journey have done it through leadership alignment, careful decision making, and demonstrated success. So let's hear from the experts. The way we're going to handle Q&A today is probably what you've seen in the last couple sessions. We'll have 2 mics. So if you guys can just raise your hand with any questions that you have, we'll bring the mic to you to make sure that everybody on the panel can hear you and also everybody in the audience can hear you as well. And then Ira and Chaz will be circulating to make sure that we get to you. So as you think about your questions, go ahead and raise your hands. I'm just going to open one up to the panel, which is to ask, what are the signals that you saw inside your organization that signaled to you you were ready to take the next step in your innovation journey and start to expand your services that you offer to the business? Go ahead.
Okay. I kind of, so I guess there was, the initial motivation was that we did some work with McKinsey to look at how we got the best bang for the buck for our R&D spending. So that's kind of what led us to an ideation journey, and that's how I started working with Bright Idea. But it became clear after a while that, okay, it's not just about ideas, it's about solutions. So there's other parts of that puzzle you need to actually get from an idea, which I call potential energy, through to something that actually is physical, it exists, right? So we started to build a toolkit of other things to help with the holistic delivery of innovation. So yeah, it just kind of takes on a life of its own then. And then we got hit by this big technological wave of innovation in the whole automotive space, and then that pulled us right out into, even out as far as Silicon Valley. So I would say some internal understanding of what it takes to really innovate, and then some external pressures and needing to go out into that ecosystem and be present there.
Okay.
So actually, when I stepped into the innovation role last year, I was the first person that got hired full time. It was a side hustle, for lack of better words, for about 3 or 4 other folks in the organization. One of whom came to Schwab by way of acquisition from another financial firm that we acquired a few years back, which is actually what started the partnership. And so that was a huge signal, was knowing that a full-time hire was coming in. So there was some additional weight and emphasis placed on innovation. The real trigger, I would say, was when we restructured and reorganized and launched our digital services organization last fall. And we suddenly had a leader who had innovation in their title, and that means a lot. And suddenly that opened a lot of doors, a lot of eyes, and made it really easy for us to start shopping our services around to senior leaders to say, we're a resource, we're a tool for your, tool belt. It's no surprise that you're being asked to innovate. That's been around as long as business has been around, but nobody's ever told you how or given you the tools or the support to make it easier. So kind of that was the snowball. So we've been really busy since last November, December, when that change happened.
So at GE, we have a luxury, I think, that not a lot of companies do. We have such a broad, diverse set of businesses in geographies, in different industries, at different cycles. Our company's 125 years old, but we have to reinvent ourselves every single year. So for us, we have this incredibly broad range of challenges, and that makes us better at doing it every time. At lunch, I was talking to somebody, and he was talking about, they're getting started on doing some things, and I said, do one project. Don't do 50, don't do 20, do one project, do it well, and figure that out. And that's how we've learned, is by one at a time. I was talking to Diane this morning, just to kind of compare notes and tell her, what I thought we needed to talk about today. And she reminded me that she started the program 6 years ago. This is my boss inside of GE, and it was organic. We needed to innovate. We needed a framework and a methodology, and she's all about that. She said in the first year she did 2 projects. 2. In the second year, she did 4. In the third year, she did 150. So the critical mass was there. The pent-up demand was there. But it's learning that process, that repeat process. We're an engineering company. That's right. That's our DNA, and it makes sense. So that's how we've been able to grow ours.
I don't know if there's anything to add from last year. I don't know what to say. I would say that, contacting Bright Idea really came out of, you heard the executive ask, but we had been looking at it because we had been prototyping basically what our process was going to be physically, before we decided to scale it. And so that was really what it came down to, is we felt pretty confident about where we were.
Okay, thank you. So what questions do you have?
So we were, I was recently disappointed in one of our challenges, and then our whole innovation program, we were looking at the level of participation of females in our ideation and innovation programs, and we're probably almost 50-50 male, women, and maybe we're at 15% female engagement. So I'm interested to learn how other companies, if they actually have the same sort of experience, if you've even looked at your data, and what people are doing about this. Because we firmly believe we need a strong diversity of experiences when it comes to innovation, and we're not necessarily getting that.
So I'm going to put a question back to you. How were you rewarding participation in the challenge?
So generally, the main thing that is an outcome is an opportunity to lead an initiative and to take a new product or service to market.
Okay. So we talk about money, love, or glory, right? How are you going to incent people? Are you going to give them money, which frankly doesn't work well anymore unless it's a lot of money? Are you going to give them love, which is what you're doing? I have this project, I'm passionate about this, I want to be able to go through with that. Or do you give them glory? And we found that the combination of the last two is the most impactful. So glory meaning recognition, right? And that recognition could be a promotion, it could be featured in the monthly newsletter, it could be you're on the bulletin board. The combination of that with the love aspect of embracing the passion of that person who had an idea, or maybe has an idea that, because your audience is 50-50, they all have ideas. They just they're not all ready to bring them forward. So it's showing them, here's what happens, here's how we're going to nurture your idea, here's what's going to happen with that. You're going to get the recognition, you're going to get the glory. Leave the money part aside unless you really want to throw that at it. But you get the wrong incentives out of that. So for us, that's been our approach. And we don't track demographically. We track by region, by business unit, by job title, a number of other things, but we don't track by gender. But by everything that I've seen, it is pretty well represented.
I'll freely admit we don't track by gender either. I would say that we're probably pretty close to 50-50. Now I'm curious. I'm going to go home and do some research.
Me too.
But I know that at least half of our challenges were sponsored by women. So that right there sets the tone. And I also think that maybe because a lot of our challenges have still been in that incremental innovation space, you have a lot more buy-in because there's not as much risk yet. And so I'd be curious when we get to the scale that you spoke of earlier, if that changes the demographics. The more technical in nature that it gets, the more pie in the sky, that more aspirational the innovation, is that where the gender breakdown starts to happen? I'm really curious.
I would say I'll come at it from a very different angle. At the beginning, it's you look at a lot of participation metrics, right? How many people, how many ideas? You're looking at these numbers, and more isn't necessarily better. So in the end, we really pared back how much we were trying to recruit anybody into the challenges, because we were trying to increase the quality and the commitment of the people that are participating, rather than just getting a lot of people. And then some of the groups were trying to say, okay, I want my group to come up with 100 ideas over the year. And it's like, no, please no. Because then they're throwing junk in there, and as we all know who's run these challenges, you have to manage the ideas and you have to treat them with respect, right? So just more is a pain in the neck. So we just really pared it back and said the people that are really committed will turn up. And we'll just do enough to notify them. And across most of our challenges, they were to solve individual problems. We would get maybe 40 odd ideas, and we'd normally pick 2 or 3 to work on. And we didn't want any more. Or maybe you can argue you're going to get a ton of stuff and you might find that extra better one. But typically what we got was enough, and we couldn't have worked on more if we had them. So I would say it's more about the quality. I completely agree with you on diversity and all of these things, but if you're focusing on the quality of the output, it kind of makes it easier.
Yeah, and I'm glad you went there. It's tough because you want people to all participate, but like I don't know if anybody else has seen this, but we see like a 3-to-1 ratio of comments versus ideas. You know, a lot of people feel safer commenting than they do sharing an idea. They're afraid it'll be a dumb idea, right? But everybody's got an opinion. So, you know, but we encourage that. But we met with this guy, Rob Nivert from 500 Startups early on, and we had the same thing. We're like, oh, we've got 100 ideas. He's like, yeah, I don't care how many. You could have 5 million. Who cares? He goes, all you need is one. Right. You need the one idea. And their thing is everything has to have a 7x return. He's like, you know, if you had one that was 1,000x, you could go home for the rest of the year. Right. Okay? It's that simple. And so, but you do want, like when we do Synapse, so I'll flip it on its head. So when we do Synapse, we build the teams. So people submit and they give us a bunch of information about themselves, and then we build very diverse teams, both, you know, technically and, you know, gender and all these other aspects. And so we kind of test ourselves in that premise. But as far as on the platform, we've never looked at it, and I really don't care. I just want the 1,000x. Give me 1,000x.
Do you encourage teams to submit ideas? Is that?
No, I wouldn't. No, we do allow for that, but we don't encourage that. And part of it, I think, actually is the nature of the platform in terms of a competition. Okay. I mean, that's typically we solicit a lot of ideas, but we say, here's the 3 we're working with. And we're starting some outreach to understand why, because I mean, my individual conversations are women are saying, well, I'm afraid to like put something out there that people may judge or find
right.
stupid. And I'm like, well, all ideas are stupid, right? If you have an idea that's like everybody agrees is a good idea, then it's probably already being done. Right. So we need the stupid ideas. So one person actually suggested have the dumbest idea competition.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Actually, we did something, a variant of that. So I would pick an award for the most innovative idea, which didn't mean we were going to work on it, but it was more to recognize something that was totally out there, totally strange and weird. And we said, great, more stuff like that. We can't quite get to it now, but we're going to recognize that. So it's a permission to get a little bit crazy.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Well, I'll play off of it. So, you know, we continue to, our big goal is to people believe that every idea is agnostic and democratic, right? We don't care where it came from. We don't care, you know, what's behind it, you know, along those same lines, because the more you can get people thinking that way, you're going to come up with something that is truly revolutionary, right? That's really what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Somebody else suggested, I think it was actually at this conference, an anonymous submissions.
Yeah, I'll comment on that. So it's interesting. As we move up the food chain in our organization, people are much more resistant of sharing ideas with their name attached to it. And personally, we don't agree with it. We have not allowed it, but we've had a bunch of pushback where we were asked by the CEO to run a challenge of the top 300 leadership in the company. And there was immense pushback to people having their names on it. It was fascinating. Did not expect it. So why are people saying that? Do you know why they're asking that?
Well, it was just an idea that say that, you know, females might participate more if they don't have that risk of being seen as, I don't know, I'm a man, don't ask me.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that you need to spend some time really digging in to try to uncover some reflections on the culture.
I don't know. There's a couple women in the room. Any comments from the women in the room? I can't comment either from that perspective. So.
No.
No.
So what I was going to say is, I think it's bigger than just the innovation program, because when you think about the statistics of men and women applying for jobs, if a man checks 40% of the boxes, it's like, okay, I'm gonna take the risk and go for it. A woman has to check 85 to 90% of the boxes before we feel confident in throwing our name in the into the hat. And so I think that it's just, even when we talk about like STEM, getting girls into STEM subjects and things of that nature, this is so far down the line that it's a conversation that needs to happen when we're like 3, not when we're 35. So I think that part of that is just, it's gonna take a generation before it changes, but that shouldn't stop you from trying to influence it. I also want to say that I think it needs to be done authentically. Nothing frustrates me more as a woman than us trying to level the playing field in one fell swoop. I've always said, I don't know what our split is at work. I'm going to guess, let's call it 70-30. I'd rather be surrounded by 30% women who are complete badasses than to be diluted at 50-50 and be surrounded by those who aren't pulling their weight. So my point being is, I think there needs to be an authentic approach and not a crutch or a handout, if you will. And I'd also say that there's different things that incent women. For me, it's like time off, or more flexibility to work from home, or flexibility to work on a different project, or so I'd also maybe spend some time in understanding, what do people want out of it, because maybe there's just a little extra something you could add to your incentive pool as well.
I want more time off too.
I know.
Throw that out there. Did I say that out loud?
You can, and I'm not saying that's
okay.
just a woman thing. We all value something different.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. All right, thanks. What other questions do we have? Mike
Way
in the back.
I'm hiding in the shadows. So I know at least a couple of you, I'm thinking specifically Greg and Will, but I don't know from Schwab or GE's perspective, have fairly historied lean practices. And TD Ameritrade has been doing the same. And I'm interested to hear how if so, how you connect that frontline incremental improvement style kind of innovation to the larger leapfrog kind of, Kaizen versus Kaikaku, if that was just that incremental versus leapfrog kind of innovation.
1% versus 10%, right?
That-
1% versus 10x, right? So is that what you're saying?
Just curious how you link those things together, because that's something that I'm thinking a lot.
I'll take it. We don't do 1%. We only do 10x. There's other organizations inside our company that have got decades doing 1%, and so we don't do it.
I would say we're structured in a way where my primary focus with the innovation challenges really ends up being that incremental change. And I always say that no matter what sexy new product we do roll out or new technology, if it's sitting on a crumbling foundation, as we like to say with all the regulation that is in our industry, being a crutch, that to me is a really fun place to play, because that's where you get the, no, but we can't do it, or the Fed won't let us. And my response is, oh, yes, we can. Let's find a way to do it. Petulant 5-year-old, right? And so that's the space I love to play. And we've got other pillars devoted to those 10x ideas. And so it may not be that you coexist in the same sandbox. You might be under the same umbrella, but it might be worth considering that, especially in the environment that we work in. So happy to chat after as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to form an answer to your question, because it's not something we really look at. Is we let it, for our typical type of a challenge, and we've run, actually I was looking back at my numbers, we've run 1,000 challenges on BI, from big to small, from incremental to huge, from the most diverse, or no, not diverse, the most point solution, how do we make this glass taller, kind of a thing. We do that kind of thing, right? But for us, every challenge has a different requirement and a different gate. And some of them are looking for lots of ideas. Some of them are looking for lots of participation, right? It's not about solving the problem, it's about engaging. We do a lot of that. So for us, every challenge seems to have a different kind of a threshold of where is the success. If it's financial, if it's business impact, if it's employee participation. Sometimes it's as simple as engaging your audience and making sure that they know that they have a contribution. We just finished one with the financial group inside our global operations group in Cincinnati, in fact. And one of the things they found was about 40% of the ideas that were submitted were things that were already being done. That's a problem. And that was a conversation that we got to have as the innovation team with the leadership to say, you don't have an innovation problem, you have a communication problem. So it is, it's interesting what gets revealed as you look at that. So obviously we always come in with a great expectation of what's going to happen at the end, but the surprises along the way sometimes are the best result.
I guess I would say that when we started the program, to gain credibility and to actually gain momentum, we positioned the program to be, bring us your problem and we will help you solve it. But it's all problem centric, right? So, and in doing that, typically they already had finances and resources assigned to this thing. So we just helped them solve it. We didn't have that random kind of slew of different ideas that we had to figure out what we did with them at the end of the day. It was known and it was very precise. So that kind of, but a lot of those projects going on were in the incremental domain. But you kind of get along that path because then you get credibility, you see that, okay, I can do stuff, this makes sense, and people get familiar with it. But now we're positioned more, well, we've grown the toolkit and the ability, we have more ways to help people solve problems. So the magnitude of the problem that we get posed is not in our control, but we just apply the toolkit. So again, when they're more aware of you, they'll come to you with maybe bigger magnitude issues. We have one in our textile group now. We've been weaving cushions the same way forever, and they just cannot get where they need to be from a cost point of view with this. So they said, right, we cannot do anything that's going to be a small change. We have to revolutionize this thing completely. And you guys are the only ones we know who can help us get to that. So it's about the magnitude of the challenge and who brings it to you, but our effort is really to try and help them solve that problem.
And I know one thing that we within the services team talk a lot about is making sure you understand what your mandate is. So when you look at the people above you and the people above them, what do they want you to deliver? What's the expectation? Because is it going to be something that's revolutionizing the auto industry, or is it solving problems across the organization? And that oftentimes provides a lot of clarity on what you include within your scope of services. So that might help as well.
And just to clarify a little, like it's clear what our scope is, what we are continuing to work through is how we also, to your point, build that credibility, link with the culture and the empowerment and the history that we already have, build upon that to help shift people's mindsets and add this new skill on top of it. And so that's just, I was interested philosophically if you've done any of those kind of relationships as you've built. And so this is very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.
Yes, Rod.
I like it.
Can you guys maybe talk about some of the strategies and tactics that you guys have employed in attracting the stakeholder that is the laggard, right? Obviously, you always have people coming to your program that are early adopters and want to use it, but what strategies and tactics have you guys used to scale across your organizations?
So, our aviation business at GE, they are copious users. This has become a culture for them of how they communicate. So I don't know of any laggards there anymore because they've all realized if I want attention to my project, attention to my problem, if I want, if I want somebody to throw money at this with me, or if I want to make a change, or if I want to do whatever, this is a path that works. It's a democratic, accessible, available path. And anybody who cares about the work they do is going to seek out a path where they can solve their problems. So we've made that highly, highly accessible for them, especially to do that. So, and they continue to march and lead the company in use of the platform. So for us, it's almost like a why not, you know, it's that easy.
So I want to clarify your question. You're just saying you want everybody to be involved, and how do you get the people that are resistant to get involved?
Well, we see that, you know, in every organization, somebody's always on the fence.
Right, right.
They're not really ready to raise their hand and come to you and be like, I have a problem.
Yeah.
You know, so what I'm asking for is, you know, how do you pull that person off the fence and to get them to sponsor or get them to be involved, because that is part of scaling your broader innovation.
I guess my question back to you is, why do you want them to work with you if they're even on the fence? I mean, I don't want to work with those people. I mean, I'll be controversial here. I want to. We're magnetic. We want people to come work with us. But if they're on the fence, then frankly, my plan is to go work with the people that want to work with us and make the contrast so great that people go, why aren't you working with them? And that's really what we focus on.
Sure.
So.
You know, we also try to reduce, I mentioned aviation, but we do this across the rest of the company as well. We try to reduce the friction, reduce the cost, the time, the talent, all of that. Make it easy for people.
Better, cheaper, faster, right?
Better,
Isn't
cheaper,
that?
faster.
Yeah, you always hear that from GE.
Yeah,
That's right.
Oh yeah. So you know, by making that more accessible, we try to take away as many roadblocks as we can.
We're saying the same thing. I'm saying, yeah, you know, you just make it look so damn good that they want to come work with you. And if they still don't want to, they're going to be so obstinate. It's going to be a failure either way, you know. And so it's, I don't know. It becomes a lot easier in that situation.
Yeah.
I would say at the beginning, one of the things we did, so we have 10 product areas, and so we said, okay, we need to create a baseline cadence of challenges, so we have a consistent performance for a year. So we run these things for a month, so 10 product groups. We have Christmas and we have summer break, so 10 challenges, 10 months, 10 product groups. Our CTO said, you guys, you all have to run one challenge per year. And it was, so you can't complain about that. It's one challenge a year, that's not much. And by the way, it's going to help you solve a problem you've got. So that does some effort to spread it across all the areas, but they don't equally stay on board. Some of them still bitch and moan about one challenge a year, you know. And so we've actually started to cut back off of that. And to your point, it's like, I haven't got the energy to try and drag you through this. If you're not going to be part of the how, I want some fellowship. You know, come along, get on board, and if you want to get on board, get on board. We'll work with you. We'll do whatever we need to do. And if you don't want to come, ciao, don't care. Yeah.
There's a little bit of like innovation dating where you show up, you present, and then you just let it dangle and you walk away, and then you play hard to get a little bit. But I will say that for us, it was having some really great success stories to bring to the table to those groups. Again, we're going to talk about the groups that you'd never think of in a million years as being innovative. So your compliance groups, your risk groups, things of that nature. Ones that probably past innovation employees wrote off as not being innovative enough. You don't know until you give them a chance. But I think having that strong story to tell and a really compelling pitch kind of as part of our roadshow efforts, which the early part of our roadshow efforts yielded some really great sponsorships. And so we started to use those success stories to kind of beef up and tweak our roadshow presentation. So by the time we got to folks like compliance and risk, who I was frankly dreading to go talk to, we had a story they couldn't ignore. But we put the story out there, and then the ball was in their court. I mean, I didn't court them anymore. There were no follow-up emails. They all eventually started to come back.
So I want to yes and you for that, Veronica, because I do think there's two things you brought up there that I think are key. So we have Dennis from Bright Idea was asking me. We were talking about it. We have a public speaking coach that works for us, and he's been volunteering with us. So every single one of the people on the team is trained to go represent iHub publicly, you know, internally in the company. And we do those road shows. You know, we are magnetic. So don't get me wrong. I'm not obstinate to the people. We go out and talk to them, but we leave it in their court. right? We leave it in their court, and it's not me, it's not you, it's just not right, right? You know, I love the dating thing because it's okay, right? You know, and they know about us. And with the storytelling, we use storytelling, you know, the documentation, the video and stuff, because we want people, frankly, my goal is I want them to go, damn, I should have worked with those guys. Look at them, you know, they made him look so good and they solved that problem. And that's the easiest you could make it, because they'll come the next time and they'll be ready to work with you, right? Because they know, they got passed by.
And it was interesting too that with those groups, I ended up getting some really great emails back from the employees. So if I'm presenting at a leadership offsite, it would be the mid-level leaders that would come back and say, that was fantastic, that was exciting, I can't wait to work with you. And it was the level above or 2 levels above that was the one that was my roadblock.
Yeah, so can I yes and you again, because that was really good. One of the things that we find is that early on in my career, I had a job where I worked with one of the CEOs of the company. He said, yeah, breaking through the frozen middle is a career to try and do it. And the person that figures that out will have, you know, revenue and, you know, a long career. And I think what we're talking about with, you know, innovation through these platforms, gig economy, all these elements are doing. That's what this is doing. It's melting that frozen middle. The power those people willed. And again, a lot of times they're in a catch-22. I do have empathy for them, but they are playing with people's lives, you know, limiting their capability, limiting their output, and limiting their belief in themselves and what they can accomplish and everything. And what we're doing, I think the greatest good that we could do is to eliminate that control factor so that people, if they do believe they're made for more, if they do believe that they can do these things that people don't recognize or whatever, we just give them the power to go do it and show that off, right? Think of yourself early in your career, you know, having that opportunity. And I say, hell yeah, I would fight for that every day. And the middle management and above, they'll get the news eventually, right? It'll just happen. And so that's really what gets me out of bed in the morning, the ability to go do that. The technology thing will happen. That will happen. The people side of it, if you unlock that, then all of our jobs become very easy. Cool. This is my opinion. I'm just saying. Does anybody agree?
Well, since you're right, yes.
So I'm curious, when you are expanding efforts, that requires more people, it requires more money, more stuff, more tools, more resources. How have you successfully lobbied for the things that you need to expand your work?
I would say I was really fortunate in that our CEO kicked off this program called Innovation Boost. So I got the task to lead this thing, and then they said, okay, you're not going to get people as such. You know, you can pick a team, an internal team to work with, but you know, you're not going to get assigned any staff. This is going to be maybe a 1, 2, 3 year thing. So, at the advice of a good friend of mine, he said, don't pick a team of the innovative doers you know out there, because those poor people are buried. That everyone goes to them to solve problems, and they're not in control of their own destiny. Pick their bosses, pick the VPs, and pick the senior directors who are in charge of the different groups, who are at least open to this idea. So firstly, it's a CEO-sponsored group, but they're open to the idea of innovation. And then those guys, we work the projects that we worked on together. When you make an advocate of that VP, you don't have to tell him to push it out in the organisation. You don't have to beg, borrow and steal for resources. They just understand. That's like, oh yeah, I did that project, that just makes sense, right? We're doing that from now on. And all of a sudden it falls off your plate in the innovation team because it just becomes part of doing business. So I think I was lucky as anything that little constellation came together, because I've never had to have a conversation with anybody about people, and money just popped up when these guys said, okay, yeah, he did that, I want to do that. 50 grand, go for it. And so it was super lucky. And yeah, I think just by virtue of the fact that, again, it's all about going to a place that needs to solve a problem. And if you can get these people and these teams to participate to solve their problem, yeah, lobbying just goes away.
I think we have a bit of a unique situation at GE. We've done our 1,000 internal challenges, and we're actually actively working with external customers to bring them along the same journey. So we get introduced to our external GE customers by our champions inside, by the people who've had successes, and they say, you got to try this. And we actually work with external companies. And so I'm having to get their budget at a different company and their management involved in the rest. So every time it's a different type of incentive, but part of our rigor is demonstrating what the return on that investment is. And the return on investment isn't always financial. You hope it is, and for some things it has to be. But sometimes it is engagement, and there is a financial incentive to having engaged employees. Sometimes it's just helping them understand how that culture works. How do you create ideas? How do you reward ideas? How do you engage your people, even women? Have them ask questions. So we have that unique perspective that we deal with outside companies as well.
I would say we're in a really similar situation to what Greg talked about from the standpoint that it was top-down. I wouldn't quite call our innovation program a mandate, but the focus and the effort definitely came from the top down. And it's a real gift to be given very little resources. It'd be a whole different situation if you were given the world and then told to deliver upon it. We had a number of years where we didn't have interest rate rises, and our entire industry was kind of hamstrung, and those were some of the easiest years to lead people in. And all of a sudden, we're in this massive growth space. And so I love the fact that we started small. We started with just a couple of us, no budget, and just to see the expansion over the last year, and Rod can attest to it. I mean, it's gone from running a few challenges to running, 3 times more than last year. We're standing up a lab. The external piece is starting to fall into place. But we also did a lot with very little. It's very similar to, what I like to tell senior leaders is if you can turn around a track record of 1 or 2 innovation challenges that you've done with no budget, and you have some great ROI to your name with that, then you have a leg to stand on when you want to put 100, 500 grand, $1 million against it. No one's going to question you because you've now proven it. So I feel like we were really scrappy, and we were very, pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps with very little, and really kind of flexed our muscles and showed our worth. And I mean, it wasn't easy, but I'm glad. I'd rather go that way than to be, handed the keys to the brand new Porsche and go have fun. So I appreciate the fact that it wasn't an easy journey.
Well, I agree with you again. So we're still very scrappy, right?
Should we just swap seats?
We should, yeah. So it
Maybe not. I gotta keep.
I would say we were never a CEO mandate or any leadership. We still aren't. When we met last year, we met Eric Rees, and we talked to him about. I know he's done a bunch of work with GE. He told us, "Yeah, you guys are a unicorn. I've never heard of another story ever of something starting grassroots and to get to where we are." But we basically every time we have to go out and fund whatever we're doing, and I agree. It makes you hungry. It makes you say, "Oh yeah, you're not going to give me the money? That's fine. I'll figure it out.
I'll show you.
I'll show you."
Yeah.
And so it's amazing. People, a bunch of the team members will occasionally say, "I wish we were, a CEO I wish we were in the C-suite." I said, "Yeah, guys," because we've met with a bunch of organizations that were born there and have that pressure and everything. It's different. They operate very differently. I said, it's not all wine and roses there. They have their own, downside risks, and I would rather be on the scrappy side, personally.
Yep.
What questions do you have?
May I ask one?
No.
All right.
Technically, that was a question.
No.
So this was actually raised in the labs workshop this morning, but I think it's relevant to this discussion. You all represent very large organizations. As you've grown and gained more visibility within your organization, I'm sure there are other innovation teams. Have you had any challenges with just aligning and making sure there's not overlap, either from the lens of...
That's a loaded question. Yes. Okay. There's 34 innovation teams at GM.
Okay.
34.
And from the employee lens...
That I know of. Good man. Yeah, anybody in a large corporation knows that there's a lot of people with the name innovation in their title or in their group. That's very common. And it's not bad. You have to figure out how to work with all those different personalities and opinions and goals and align them. And I can tell you that, You know, I have a dream of one day, I've said it to a couple people here this week, that all of those 34 teams at some point will agree on one thing. They can be working on hundreds of things, but if there's one thing we can agree on, we will be unstoppable. And so I don't view it as a negative. I view it as a positive. We're just not there. We're not home yet with it. And I think I meet so many times with other companies that have the same situation, and everybody means well. And it's just, you're not going to have a perfect world where everybody snaps fingers, we're all lined up, we're all going to get it done. But if you can align on one thing, I think you can accomplish great things.
Ditto. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Well said.
Have you heard of the Stockdale Paradox? It's from good to great. So we talked about my optimism. So I operate off the Stockdale Paradox. Stockdale was a lieutenant admiral. He was a admiral, yeah. And from Vietnam, he was in the Hanoi Hilton for like 12 years with John McCain and other guys. And a bunch of people died in that. They didn't get out. And they asked him later. They said, "How did you get out?" And he said, "I had a premise, basically. The first part of the premise was I knew I would get out at some point. Someday I would get out. And the second part of the premise was I had no idea when." And so I think with these innovation teams, you have to operate in that paradox, because everybody means well. It's a chaotic mess, and as long as you decide, yeah, at some point we're going to align and we're going to be unstoppable, but I'm not going to worry about it today. That's my opinion.
And actually, I don't even like alignment for these things, because there are, I wouldn't say innovation teams, but one of the really cool things about Autolive is that it's a Swedish company, so it's no kind of command and control company. It's like we suck at organisation structures and
this sounds fun.
hierarchies and all stuff. We are hopeless at it. And the good thing about it is it creates a kind of a paranoia throughout all of our development.
A healthy paranoia.
Yeah, right. Because they're like, no one's going to tell me what to do. I better figure this out. And I'm going to hedge tons of little bets, and I'm not going to tell anybody about it. And so as you get to know these guys and they let you in a bit, you see some amazing things going on, because they are so personally responsible for this. Because it feels like it's a vacuum, but it's intentional.
It's the inverse of the third gorilla.
Yeah.
We're saying, yeah, it's on you.
Yeah.
There's nobody else. My executive vice president for engineering has a sticker on his computer. I love it. It says, "It's up to us. Nobody else is coming."
Right. Yeah, there is
And
no
that's
cavalry.
basically what you're saying.
There's no cavalry.
Cavalry's
right?
not coming.
And we're one of the guys said, and we're not the Marines. We leave people behind.
Wow.
But,
I want that.
That's very inspirational. I like it.
but the irony, like I say, is it's actually a tactic from our head.
Well, and there's opportunity in that.
But they want to leave it open.
Yeah,
like
because people can reinvent them. I mean, this is I believe that people in redemption, people can reinvent themselves.
Right.
You know, come on, dude. Who's stopping you?
Right.
Let's do it.
And it's very much like that. So there's been many times, and actually, so my boss is a VP of development, and when we were putting this innovation team together, he said, number one objective we have to do is don't screw up what we have right now. Because, again, if you make all these things visible, you're trying to get everybody aligned, you're trying to make a grand plan, or you're trying to steer people, you better be better than what is going on right now. And we were not sure that we could be, because you had 10 different antennas out there doing their stuff. So all we wanted to do is create a layer on top of that when they get stuck or they see an opportunity that we can help them out, they can come to us. But for the most part, have at it. We're the number one in our business in every product we make. They're doing something right. So
I want to clarify my position. I didn't say align all the organizations. I said just align on one project or thing, or I don't even know what the hell it is, but just one thing.
Yeah.
So at least we kind of have some connection. But I agree with you, the diversity of thought and process and everything, I think that's good.
yeah, I think at the end of the day, the one thing they are aligned on is keeping us at the front of the curve. So and that's all that matters.
So when we were starting our innovation program about 3 years ago, we were meeting with a lot of other people in corporate innovation community, and and some ex-corporate innovation people, and had a very depressing conversation with one of those people about, basically he said, like, you know, you will find after about 3 or 4 years that the organization runs out of ideas and entrepreneurs. And we haven't got to that point, but it's always stuck in the back of my mind as this fear that there is an end because the cream gets skimmed. And even we did see it a little bit this year in one of our programs. We did it in the same location as the previous year, and many of the really out there entrepreneurs from the previous year didn't participate the second time around. We don't know why, but I'm just wondering, has that been an issue in any of your organizations, that the well is going to go dry at some point?
The well goes dry if you keep going back to the same well for the same thing, and that's a reality. You want that well to go dry, right? Finish it. At GE, we practice. You know, we're famous for black belt, right, and Six Sigma and all of those things, and lean manufacturing. We call it FastWorks now. It's continuous improvement, and I've practiced that for 30 years. There's always incremental improvement. You do lose, you lose those 10Xs after a while. They're not as easy to get to, but there are new challenges every day. If it weren't, then we'd all be wildly profitable, and the stock market would just go away because we're all just so damn good. But I think if you're running out of the well, you're in the wrong well, because there's a big water table out there, and there's more that you can do. So it's what are you looking at? Where are your sights set, and where do you see your goals? Yeah.
Well, and I would say for us, it's been, the storytelling aspect and showing that people invest emotionally as much as they do technically, intellectually. And so if they make that investment and it just goes into a black hole and there's never a response saying, hey, thanks for your suggestion, we decided not to go forward with it, and here's why. Or, hey, by the way, we're going to fund this thing. You're going to come over here and work on a temporary work assignment, those type of things. And then you recognize it later on and say, hey, Joe or Susie came up with this, and this is what it did for the business. If you don't do those things, then people will quit on you. And in my experience also is that once they quit on you, the effort to try and revive that is impossible. They're done.
They're dead.
Yeah, they're done.
Yeah.
Yes, and I love that. I think that you can do more damage in terms of engagement if you don't deliver. So going for, let's say, a pie in the sky innovation challenge that might take 24 to 36 months or more to come to fruition, and you potentially don't deliver on it, you run a risk of damaging engagement, not just not having it the next time around, but actually taking a negative hit to engagement. Then if you tackle low-hanging fruit, like one of our challenges in our operations group was around policies and procedures. You're gonna hear me say it again, it wasn't sexy at all, but they had so much engagement that came back the second time around because 6 out of 25 ideas got implemented. And so, that's something that I share with leaders often is, what are you willing to risk? Because this could go south on you very quick. I would say that our staple organization that we partner with, we've now had, so they were with us even when we were in our, side hustle extended pilot mode. They have a lot of turnover, not necessarily for a bad reason. It's a couple great entry points into Schwab for, career building. But a lot of people grow in their careers. They may stay in that organization, it's about 6,000 people, but they may have a different lens the next year and a different lens the year after that because they're sitting in different seats and maybe working in different roles and capacities. So I haven't seen that we've run the well dry, but I guarantee you if one of those big initiatives had fallen flat and nothing was delivered, absolutely, that's the risk. And it doesn't even have to be that it's not coming to fruition. If you're not communicating that it's coming to fruition,
Right.
or that there's been a delay, or that there was a snag and a redirection and a pivot, if that is not shared broadly, disengagement is almost instantaneous.
So I'm sorry, I'll yes and you on that.
Okay.
So we're just going to keep going here. So when we have had failures, we've had challenges that have blown up, and what you need to do is you need to go out there and say, hey, guess what? This blew up. It didn't work out the way we thought it was going to work, and it's tough. That's one of the difficulties of innovation. We've kind of modified it. We used to say fail fast, but now we say you have to succeed quickly. You have to fail fast, and so the failure sucks. It is not pretty. There's real pain, but you have to call it. You
Get it over
like,
with. Call it. Yeah. We say pivot or persevere, but we always add or quit. sometimes you just have to quit. But one thing, from a very practical standpoint, one thing that we really encourage with our SMEs, our evaluators, our judges, is to very actively interact with the people as they're submitting ideas, right? If you're reading the idea, leave a flipping comment. How hard is that, right? And for a lot of people, that's all they wanted. Somebody read my idea and he said, "Oh, Bob, that's a bad idea," or "We already did that."
Hallelujah,
or
man.
something.
Yeah.
You know, comment. So.
This makes me think in terms of failure. So I would love nothing more than a failure wall. And then on the opposing wall to have a success wall, because I really think people visually need to see how much we fail in order to get to the handful of things that
We
went
call
well.
those fail fees, by the way. Like a selfie, fail fee.
Oh, okay. It's a fail fee.
We have a fail fee wall.
But I wonder, because we have not, I don't think in a lot of companies, reframed failure the right way, I wonder if that's your gender ticket as well, because we may, I don't know, I was the straight A student. My pressure from my parents was very different than what the pressure my brother was under. Makes me wonder if we take failure as this detrimental like roadblock, as opposed to a man who might see it as just a bump in the road and like, okay, we're gonna carry on tomorrow and I'm gonna give this another try. For us, it might be different. So I wonder too that failure mentality needs to be reframed.
It's culture, like you said. You know, the famous story about the founding of GE is Thomas Edison failed how many times before he invented a light bulb that worked, right? Anybody in here know? Anybody? I think it's 1,000. It's over 1,000, right? Yeah. That's part of the vernacular. So we get culturally that failure is just eliminating things that didn't work right. Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, then there's still another solution out there someplace.
An experiment or an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one other thing, so for sure we make the same products, we're going after improvements of those products. That, you know, it can feel a little stale in terms of what you're asking people, right? So you can only ask them that same question so many times, right? Yeah. So you've got to find smart ways to inspire people or challenge them or mess with them a little bit, and in terms of the questions you ask. And like, so for example, you could we would do seed ideas, right? So for example, so like reimagine how we could build a passenger airbag, and then throw that out there, and then say it could be with additive manufacturing, and we could do this, and we put some crazy ridiculous thing out there that you would always see a bit of a wave of activity after that, because even the crowd would say, I had not thought of that. And sometimes we put really stupid, ridiculous things just to see how they responded, and just to, is anyone alive out there, you know? But I think that there's a bit about engaging and inspiring, and I think, you know, like the GM guys do with these inspiring videos and communications in general. Treat it somewhat like that. It shouldn't just be a very pedestrian or simple question being asked. Make it exciting, make it cool, figure out how to challenge it with something new and modern, or how do we apply this mega trend to this?
And from a practical perspective, seed ideas are great. You know, from at the beginning, in the middle, near the end, you know, save some things back, and they don't have to be really good ideas, but you know, just because people are reading, they're comparing, and that's what you want.
You can put funny stuff in there. I mean, just put ridiculous stuff. You know, just make a bit of a game out of it. You know, because it's everything's so serious and normal. You know, just put something stupid in there. You know?
I'm sorry, you bring up one fun thing. I think, you know, having fun with this stuff is a key element. You know, a lot of times, it's one of the things I like about Bright Idea. They seem to have fun. I don't know if this is just a ruse or you actually do have fun when you're doing what you're doing. But
No, they do all the time.
What's that now?
We're good at having fun.
That's good.
Yeah.
And I think that is a key element to keeping things loose enough that people will share their ideas, because a lot of times it feels like every moment is like a career turning moment, right? And I, you know, we encourage people all the time. We're like, yeah, you just share it, you know, that your career's not going to end. It's okay. We're having fun with it. We're just, you know, we're putting yes in. And I think that, you know, the problem with the platform sometimes is it's hard to carry that in the electronic medium. It's just like, you know, things get lost in email, the context get lost in email. And so it's part of the reason we do physical events. It's part of the reason that we do that personal interaction in our studio-wise space and stuff, is because you have to have that loose moment sometimes to get to the really good idea. So I would encourage that.
Well, thanks everyone. I know we are right at our hour. Now that you've heard from some of the best and brightest, and from all the speaking engagements, so everything today, everything from yesterday, I encourage you to think about what your journey looks like. So what are some of the steps that you want to take to move to the next stage? And just know that you're not alone in this journey. You've got your customer success manager, who's always thinking about your long-term success and how to get you there. You've got your services team that's always willing to come in and partner with you and go deep. But lastly, and probably most importantly, you have each other. You've got the Bright Idea community, and I've always said that I feel like we have the most generous clients of any company. So you can rely on each other to work together to grow and to expand what you're doing within your own companies. So I want to thank our panelists today, and I also want to thank all of you for continuing to inspire us and giving us the opportunity to do the best jobs in the world every day.
Thanks,
So,
Kristen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice job.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.